You shouldn't have taken me. Before Rick could respond, alarms blared across the ship. Captain. Hale's voice crackled through the comms. We've got incoming. Fast-moving ships. Unknown origin. Rick's instincts kicked in. He turned to Velia. Is this because of you? She didn't answer, but her expression told him everything. Outside, the stars burned bright as the chase began. The alarms echoed through the Silverwing, red warning lights flashing across the control panels. Captain Rick Carter moved fast, striding toward the bridge with Velia following close behind. His crew was already in position, their hands flying over controls as they analyzed the incoming threat. Lieutenant Hale turned from the scanner display, his expression grim. 3 ships, no identification codes, they came out of nowhere. Rick's jaw tightened. This wasn't a coincidence. He turned to Velia, who stood silently beside him. Her face remained calm, but her fingers were clenched at her sides. Are they here for you? He asked. She hesitated. Yes. That one word sent a chill through the room. Rick had dealt with his share of trouble, but nothing about this situation felt normal. Hale cursed. They're locking weapons on us. Orders, Captain. Rick didn't hesitate. Shields up, evasive maneuvers. The Silverwing lurched as the engines roared to life, twisting away from the enemy ships just as plasma bolts streaked through the darkness. The shields flared under the impact, but they held. Velia took a slow breath. They won't stop. Rick shot her a sharp look. Who are they? She glanced at the screen, watching as the 3 ships pursued them with relentless precision. They're not from my father's fleet. They are something worse. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. Hale muttered under his breath, worse than a king who gives away his own daughter. Rick ignored the comment. Then tell me, who are they? Velia's violet eyes met his. Hunters. A tense silence filled the air. Rick wasn't a fool. He had encountered bounty hunters before, but this felt different. There was no communication, no demands. These ships weren't chasing for money. They were chasing to eliminate. Hale's voice broke the silence. They're gaining on us. Rick made a decision. Charge the hyperdrive. We're getting out of here. One of the crew members called out, 10 seconds to jump. The enemy ships must have realized what was happening, because suddenly the attacks intensified. More plasma fire slammed into the shields, and the ship rocked violently. The controls flickered. Shields at 60%. Hale shouted. 5 seconds. Rick's eyes stayed locked on the countdown. The ship rattled under another impact, but he held his ground. 3, 2, 1. With a final burst of energy, the Silverwing shot forward into hyperspace. The stars stretched into long streaks of light before folding into the infinite blackness. The ship steadied, the alarms fading into silence. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Hale let out a breath. We lost them. The tension on the bridge eased slightly, but Rick knew better than to relax. He turned back to Velia. Start talking. Now. She didn't look afraid. If anything, she looked resigned. You shouldn't have taken me, she said again. That's not an answer, Rick said. Who were they? Velia walked to the main console, her fingers grazing the edge of the screen. She was deep in thought. They're called the Vorthan Order. They work for the Council. They don't chase criminals. They erase threats. Rick's stomach tightened. The Council had been laughing when he took Velia, mocking him, acting as if she were a burden. But now, not even a full hour after they left, the Council's secret enforcers had already tried to kill her. Something wasn't right. He took a slow step toward her. Why are they after you? Velia turned to face him fully, and this time, there was no hesitation in her voice. Because I am not my father's real daughter. Silence. Rick's thoughts raced. Then who are you? She looked him straight in the eyes. I am a weapon. The word sent a shiver down his spine. He had been expecting something dangerous, but not this. Not something that made the most powerful rulers in the galaxy want to erase her from existence. She continued, her voice quiet but firm. The Council isn't laughing anymore, Captain. They know what I am. And now so do you. The ship hummed softly as they drifted through hyperspace, but for the first time, Rick realized that they weren't safe anywhere. The hum of the Silverwing's engines filled the quiet tension on the bridge. Captain Rick Carter stood unmoving, his sharp gaze locked onto Velia. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what she had just said. A weapon. His crew stood frozen, waiting for his response. Even Lieutenant Hale, usually quick with a sarcastic remark, stayed silent. Everyone had seen the deadly efficiency of the Fourth Order. If they had been sent to erase Velia, then whatever she was dangerous. Rick exhaled slowly. Explain. Velia's violet eyes didn't waver. I was created, not born. My father, King Saltor, needed an heir, but he didn't trust nature to give him one strong enough. So he turned to something else. She paused, her voice steady but cold. Science. Forbidden science. Rick frowned. Genetic engineering. Velia nodded. And more. The best minds in the Empire were forced to create something beyond normal limits. They mixed royal blood with something ancient, something the Council fears. Rick studied her carefully. What did they use? For the first time, Velia hesitated. Then she said, the lost DNA of the primordials. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. Even those who didn't fully understand what that meant could feel the weight of it. Hale cursed under his breath. Primordials. That's just a myth. Velia shook her head. No, it's real. The Council buried the truth centuries ago, but my father found remnants of them. He thought he could use their power to create the ultimate heir, a ruler stronger than any before. Her fingers curled into fists. But when I was born, he realized his mistake. Rick's voice was calm but firm. What kind of mistake? She looked directly at him. He was afraid of me. Something about the way she said it sent a chill down Rick's spine. He had met powerful beings before. Some were arrogant, others reckless. But Velia wasn't either. She wasn't boasting, nor was she seeking pity. She was simply telling the truth. Afraid of what? Hale asked. What can you do? Velia didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned toward the main viewport, gazing at the streaks of light as they traveled through hyperspace. I don't know, she admitted. The experiments stopped before my full abilities awakened. My father realized too late that he had created something he couldn't control. So he chose the only option left. He got rid of me. Rick folded his arms. By giving you to me. She let out a humorless laugh. It was the perfect plan. He made it look like a joke, made sure the entire Council saw it. That way, he wouldn't be responsible for whatever happened next. If I die, it's no longer his problem. If I survive, she trailed off. Rick finished for her. Then the problem becomes mine. Another long silence. Hale shook his head. This is insane. If the king feared her, if the Fourth Order was sent to kill her, then we should. He stopped himself, but Rick knew what he was about to say. We should get rid of her. Velia didn't react, but she had to know what everyone was thinking. She wasn't stupid. Rick ignored Hale. His instincts had kept him alive for years, and right now, his gut was screaming that something was wrong with this entire situation. The Council had been laughing when he took her, but the moment he left, they sent an elite kill squad after her. Why? If she was really that dangerous, why let him take her at all? His thoughts were interrupted by an urgent beeping from the ship's control panel. One of the crew members turned pale. Captain, we have a problem. Rick walked over. What is it? The officer swallowed hard. We're being tracked. Hale cursed. That's impossible. We jumped to hyperspace. The officer's hands flew across the console. I don't know how, but they're following us. 3 ships, same ones as before. They're locked onto our location. Rick clenched his jaw. The Vorthan Order wasn't just skilled. They were relentless. How long until they catch up? 2 minutes. A cold realization settled over Rick. They weren't just after Velia. They were after all of them now. He turned to Velia. Is there any way to stop them? Her expression darkened. Yes. Rick narrowed his eyes. How? She met his gaze. Let me show you what I really am. The ship shook violently as the enemy closed in. The chase wasn't over. It was just beginning. The Silverwing trembled as warning sirens blared through the ship. The enemy ships were closing in, and this time, there would be no easy escape. Captain Rick Carter stood firm, his sharp gaze locked on Velia. Her last words echoed in his mind. Let me show you what I really am. Rick's instincts screamed at him. He didn't trust easily, and he never gambled with his crew's lives. But right now, they had no other choice. The Vorthan Order wasn't hunting them for sport. They were hunting to kill. Hale's voice cut through the tension. Captain, whatever she's planning, we don't have time for games. Those ships will be on us in less than a minute. Rick ignored him. His gut told him that Velia was the key to surviving this. He met her gaze. What do you need? Velia stepped forward, her expression unreadable. Take me to the engine core. The request was strange, but Rick didn't hesitate. He turned to Hale. You have the bridge. Keep us alive for 60 more seconds. Hale muttered a curse but nodded. Fine. But if she does anything crazy, don't say I didn't warn you. Rick motioned for Velia to follow, and together they rushed down the corridors. The ship trembled again as another blast struck the shields. They had no time left. They reached the engine core, a glowing, pulsating sphere of energy housed within a reinforced chamber. Velia stepped forward, pressing her hands against the glass-like barrier. Rick watched carefully. What are you doing? Her voice was quiet, unlocking what I was meant to be. Then, it happened. A strange energy rippled from her hands, sinking into the engine's core. The soft blue glow of the ship's power source flared into a deep violet light, the same color as Velia's eyes. The hum of the engines shifted into something unnatural. The ship changed. Rick felt the shift in the air, as if reality itself had bent for a brief second. The Silverwing was still the same ship, but something was different. Faster, stronger, more alive. Velia's body tensed, and for a moment, Rick saw something flicker behind her eyes. Something old, something powerful. She turned to him, her voice distant, almost layered. I can see them now. Rick didn't understand. See who? She lifted a hand, fingers glowing faintly with the same strange energy that now pulsed through the ship. The ones hunting us. Suddenly, the ship's view screen flashed with an incoming transmission. The enemy. A deep metallic voice crackled through the speakers. Human vessel, you are carrying an unauthorized entity. Surrender her now, and we will make your deaths painless. Velia tilted her head slightly, listening. Then, for the first time since Rick had met her, she smiled. But it wasn't a smile of amusement or kindness. It was something ancient, something that sent a shiver through Rick's spine. She whispered, They don't understand, do they? Then, before Rick could stop her, she touched the engine core again. The Silverwing vanished. Not into hyperspace, not into any known method of travel. 1 second, the ship was surrounded by enemy hunters. The next, it was somewhere else. The crew gasped, alarms blaring in confusion. The navigation systems flickered wildly, unable to process what had just happened. Hale's panicked voice came through the comms. Captain, we're not anywhere. Rick turned to Velia, his breath steady but his mind racing. What did you do? Velia exhaled slowly. I woke up. Outside, the stars didn't look the same. The Silverwing had crossed into a place that should not exist. And the enemy? They were nowhere to be seen. You said. The Silverwing floated in absolute silence, The ship's engines hummed softly, but the usual background noise, the chatter of the crew, the faint beeping of the control panels, was gone, because no one knew where they were. Rick Carter stood in the center of the bridge, staring at the view screen. Space stretched endlessly before him, but it wasn't the familiar black void dotted with stars. It was something else. The sky outside shimmered with shifting colors, deep blues, swirling purples, and glowing golden patterns that pulsed like a living heartbeat. There were no stars, no planets, no signs of the enemy ships that had been chasing them just seconds ago. Lieutenant Hale's voice broke the silence. "Captain, our nav systems are completely scrambled. I don't think we're in normal space anymore." Rick exhaled slowly, then turned to the only person who had an answer. Velia. She stood by the control panels, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Whatever she had done, it had changed her too. There was a new energy in the way she moved. Calm, sure, as if she had always belonged to a place like this. She looked at him. "We're safe." Hale let out a sharp laugh. "Safe? You call this safe? We don't even know what this place is." Rick raised a hand, silencing him. His gaze stayed on Velia. "Where are we?" She tilted her head slightly, studying the strange colors outside the ship. A place between places, a hidden layer of reality that the Council erased from history long ago. Rick's stomach tightened. "How do you know that?" Velia turned back to him, her voice steady. "Because I was meant to return here. This is where my power comes from." The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. The Vorthan Order had been willing to break every law of war to eliminate her. The Council had laughed when she was given away, only to send their deadliest enforcers after her minutes later. And now, they had vanished from existence. Rick had always trusted his instincts. Right now, those instincts told him one thing. Velia was far more than just an unwanted daughter. She turned back to the screen. "We can't stay here forever. The longer we remain, the harder it will be to return." Hale frowned. "Return to what?" "The moment we go back, those hunters will find us again." A ghost of a smile touched Velia's lips. "No, not this time." Rick folded his arms. "Why?" She met his gaze. "Because I'm not running anymore." For the first time, there was something in her eyes beyond quiet resignation. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was purpose. Velia reached out, her fingers brushing against the ship's control panel. Instantly, the glowing colors outside the ship shifted, swirling into new patterns. The silver wing trembled, and Rick felt something move, not physically, but in the fabric of reality itself. The stars reappeared. The blackness of space returned. And in the distance, a planet loomed, a planet that hadn't been there before. Velia exhaled slowly. "We're back." Rick turned to his crew. "Status." One of the officers scanned the readings, eyes wide. "We're exactly where we were before, but the enemy ships are gone." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. The Vorthan Order, the ships that had been locked onto their position just seconds before, erased. Hale looked at Velia with something between suspicion and awe. "What the hell did you just do?" She turned to Rick. "I rewrote the game." Rick didn't know if that was a good thing or not. But one thing was certain. The Council wasn't laughing anymore. The Silver Wing drifted in open space, its engines humming softly as the crew processed what had just happened. The enemy ships gone. The Vorthan Order, who had been relentlessly hunting them, erased from existence. And standing in the middle of it all was Velia, her violet eyes still shimmering with an eerie glow. Captain Rick Carter had seen a lot in his years, wars, betrayals, and impossible victories. But nothing had ever made him feel like this. His instincts, the same ones that had kept him alive through countless battles, were screaming at him. Velia wasn't just a weapon. She was something more. He exhaled and turned to his crew. "Check our systems. Make sure we're fully operational." Lieutenant Hale still looked rattled but nodded. "Aye, Captain." Velia, however, stood motionless, staring at her hands as if they weren't entirely her own. Rick took a step closer. "Are you all right?" She blinked and looked up at him. "I don't know." Her voice was quiet, uncertain. For the first time since they had met, she looked vulnerable. "You didn't just move the ship," Rick said, studying her carefully. "You moved reality itself." She hesitated. "I didn't know I could do that." That answer didn't comfort him. Before he could respond, the comms panel crackled to life. "Unknown vessel, you are entering restricted space. Identify yourself immediately." Hale's head snapped toward the console. "That's impossible. No one should know we're here." Rick narrowed his eyes, patched them through. A holographic image flickered to life in front of them. A figure stood in the projection, an alien with dark, silver-toned skin and piercing gold eyes. Their uniform bore the insignia of the Galactic Council. Rick's stomach clenched. They knew. The alien's voice was cold, calculating. "Captain Rick Carter of the Silverwing. You have in your possession an entity of grave importance. Surrender her immediately, or face the full power of the Council's forces." Velia exhaled softly. "They came faster than I expected." Rick turned to her. "You knew this would happen." She gave a small nod. "They wouldn't let me disappear so easily. Not after what I just did." Hale cursed under his breath. "We barely escaped the last group. Now the entire council is coming for us." Rick clenched his fists. The council had mocked him when he accepted Velia. They had laughed as if she was a burden. But now, the truth was clear. They had never expected her to survive. And now that she had, they were afraid. The alien commander's voice hardened. "You have 30 seconds to comply." Rick turned back to Velia. "Can you do it again?" She hesitated. "Not yet. Whatever I did, it took something out of me. I need time." They didn't have time. Rick's mind raced. Fighting the full force of the council wasn't an option. Running wouldn't work, not without Velia's power. That left only one choice. He turned back to the hologram, forcing a smirk onto his face. "Commander, I think there's been a misunderstanding." The alien narrowed their eyes. "Explain." Rick leaned against the control panel casually. "You think we have something important. But if she was really that dangerous, why did your council give her away in the first place?" A flicker of hesitation crossed the commander's face. Rick pressed forward. "Either she's a worthless exile, or she's the most powerful secret in the galaxy. It can't be both. So which is it?" Silence. The tension on the bridge was suffocating. The entire crew held their breath, waiting. Finally, the commander's eyes darkened. "Surrender her now, or we will open fire." Rick smirked. "Thought so." Then he slammed his hand onto the control panel. Shields up. Evasive maneuvers. The Silverwing roared to life as the first blast struck. The council had made their decision. So had Rick. He wasn't giving anything up. Not without a fight. The Silverwing jolted violently as the first blast slammed into its shields. Warning sirens blared, red lights flashing across the bridge. Rick Carter gritted his teeth and grabbed onto the control panel to steady himself. The Galactic Council wasn't playing games anymore. "Shields holding," one of the crew members reported, though the strain in their voice was obvious. "But we won't last long under this kind of fire." Lieutenant Hale cursed as he scanned the readings. "We're outgunned. 4 council warships against 1 old freighter. This isn't a battle. It's an execution." Rick ignored the panic in his crew's voices. His mind worked fast, calculating possibilities. Running wasn't an option. Fighting was suicide. That left only one path, something unpredictable. He turned to Velia. She stood near the control panel, her violet eyes glowing faintly. There was a strange tension in her stance, like she was holding something back. "You said you need time," Rick said. "How much?" She exhaled. "A few minutes. I'm still adjusting." Rick nodded. That was all he needed to hear. He just had to keep them alive until then. He spun to Hale. "Take us into that asteroid field." Hale's eyes widened. "Are you insane? That's suicide." Rick smirked. "No, it's strategy." The Silverwing veered sharply as Hale reluctantly followed orders. The Council warships hesitated for a brief second before pursuing, their weapons lighting up the darkness of space. The asteroid field was chaos. Massive chunks of rock drifting in unpredictable patterns, some moving at deadly speeds. One wrong move and the Silverwing would be crushed. But Rick had spent his whole life navigating the impossible. "Stay sharp," he called out. "Use the asteroids for cover. Make them work for it." The ship weaved through the deadly maze, narrowly dodging collisions. The Council ships weren't as lucky. One of them clipped an asteroid, its shields flaring under the impact. Rick grinned. "Good. Let them struggle." Another explosion shook the ship. Hale cursed. "They're still hitting us, Captain. We can't keep this up." Rick glanced at Velia. "Are you ready yet?" Her breathing was steady, her fingers twitching slightly as if she was feeling something unseen. Then, finally, she lifted her gaze. "Yes." Rick didn't hesitate. "Do it." Velia closed her eyes. A pulse of energy rippled through the ship, something unseen, but felt. The lights dimmed for a brief second before flaring back to life. Then the impossible happened. The asteroids moved. Not randomly, with purpose. The massive chunks of rock suddenly shifted in synchronized patterns, like soldiers following orders. They twisted and turned at impossible angles, slamming into the Council warships with devastating force. One ship was crushed instantly, its hull cracking apart like paper. Another spiraled out of control, debris ripping through its shields. On the bridge of the Silverwing, silence fell. Hale's voice was barely a whisper. What the hell was that?" Velia opened her eyes. They glowed brighter than before, stronger. "I told you," she said softly. "I woke up." Rick exhaled, steadying himself. He had seen miracles before, but this was something ancient, powerful. The remaining Council ships didn't stick around to fight. The moment they realized what had happened, they turned sharply and jumped into hyperspace, fleeing. The mighty Galactic Council, running for their lives. Rick turned to Velia, his mind racing. "They'll come back." Velia nodded. "Yes. But next time, they won't just send warships. They'll send something worse." Hale crossed his arms. "And what the hell are we supposed to do against that?" Velia looked at Rick. His jaw tightened. He had started this as a simple man, a smuggler, a captain of a ragtag crew, someone just trying to survive. But now he was holding the most dangerous secret in the galaxy, and the galaxy was about to change forever. Rick straightened his shoulders. "Then we stop running." Hale frowned. "And do what?" Rick's expression hardened. "We fight."